Hello everybody, it's Whiskey11 and welcome back to the Gaming Lounge. In this video we are going to be covering the AV-8B Night Attack variant carrier operations. And in this video specifically what we're going to talk about is operating from the USS Tarawa in-game because, well, Harriers don't operate conventionally off of the Admiral Kuznetsov, which is not even a US carrier, nor the John C Stennis, which is designed specifically for conventional aircraft such as the FA-18C Hornet and the F-14V Tomcats in-game. With the USS Tarawa comes a couple of unique features. One, you'll notice there are no catapults for us as an assisted takeoff, and with that means we have to discuss some things that involve some math. Yes, I'm aware. Math, oh my goodness. There are two things that we need to know about, specifically with regards to the Harrier at takeoff. One of them is our takeoff weight. The other is going to be our weight when it comes in for landing. So everything is based upon our weight. Now, in order for a Harrier to do a vertical takeoff, the weight of the aircraft has to be 21,000 pounds or less. You cannot do a vertical takeoff with 21,000 pounds or more of total aircraft weight. Now, to put that into perspective, I'm loaded up here with wait a minute. That was supposed to be an AIM-9. Okay. Well, we have a sidearm and an AIM-9. That's what you can see. And underneath, we have a gun pod and the Lightning T-pod, which is the targeting pod. Our total aircraft weight, which, by the way, you can find in the rearming panel, is 24,855 pounds. So even with this Spartan loadout, we are over 21,000 pounds. We cannot do a vertical takeoff in this configuration. In order to do a vertical takeoff, we would have to be at basically half fuel with this current configuration. That's important to remember because if we take off with 7,600 pounds of fuel like we currently have now, I can't just go around and do a landing right away. So you can see here just how quickly it ramps up. Now, the Harrier can do short takeoffs off of the Tarawa with an incredible loadout. So here we have a whole metric crap ton of bombs. We have 6 GBU-12s, 2 Maverick E-models, and then the sidearm and sidewinder, and that gets us to just under 31,000 pounds in total. This is a pretty potent loadout. With the T-pod, you could take out, in theory, 8 targets on the ground, 9 if you include a radar array, if the sidearm actually makes it there. That's a pretty potent loadout for an aircraft that can take off and land on such a short runway, and this will take off on the Tarawa with that loadout fairly easily. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cancel out of that, and we're just going to talk about some things on takeoff. I have a takeoff checklist that I need to go through before I decide to actually take off. The first thing I want to do is I want to turn on my water supply because the Harrier does not produce maximum engine thrust without water, and that's because the engine will overheat because there's not enough air flowing through the engine. It's pulling all the air in, and we need water to cool it down. So that's this switch here. We flip it to the up position to take off. You can hear the engine ramped up in RPM to 350 from 285. Next thing that we need to do is we need to come down here and talk about our nozzle control setup. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off track IR for a minute. Right here we have a handle. This is not the nozzle control handle. This is actually the nozzle stop handle. And this allows the pilot to just yank back on the nozzle control, which is this guy here, and change the nozzle and then not have to worry about going past his desired setup or having to focus on the HUD during a crucial moment like vertical takeoff. So what this does is it allows us to set the nozzle's stopping point where we can just pull back on the lever and it will stop there no matter where we try and pull it to. So we need about 60 degrees. Now, it doesn't matter what combat loadout you go with, 60 degrees is going to be the maximum that you're going to utilize at takeoff for a short takeoff, especially from the Tarawa. There is, if lighter configurations such as this configuration, we could set it to just 55, but I'm going to set it to 60 just because it's easier just to talk about it as one number, 60 degrees of nozzle. So I'm going to unlock track IR here, Zoom back out. We're going to come back up to here, and we're going to confirm that our nozzle is set to 60. You can see here the end where it says nozzle, the 60, and you can see that changes as I move my nozzle positions to selector. You can also see it over here. So this setting here gives us 60 degrees. You can see that's about halfway, well, it's practically to where you can see the 65 degree portion. Okay, so we've got that done. The next thing to do is to double check to make sure our flaps are on and set to the auto mode. They are automatically set at 25 degrees when the aircraft is not moving forward and not in a landing configuration. So we're ready to go there. We can turn our RWR on in our stores, even though we don't need it because this is a practice mission. Probably should have that active too. As you can see, we are basically ready to go. So I have my EHSD up, I have my engine performance panel up here. Just double checking all my stuff. We got oxygen on, we've got our lights on, nozzle stop. Nozzles are all the way forward, although we're going to set these down to 10 degrees for takeoff. Anti-skid is going to be set to on. Now, anti-skid actually disables nose wheel steering, so you want to make sure that you're lined up roughly with the front of this as you go. Ideally, you want to be on this line and lined up that way. Now, on most multiplayer servers, you're actually going to be taking off further forward. So let's go ahead and let's get our nose wheel steering back on. Let's go ahead and... well, maybe it's on. Let's taxi forward a little bit. We're going to have to disable our parking brake, which is over here, hidden behind the throttle. So we're going to go and we're going to taxi, and we're going to do a little bit better job of lining up here. Takes a little bit to get the Harrier to really move. So generally speaking, you're going to be taking off from one of these more forward positions. Okay. You can actually see the markers here on the deck, the different takeoff marker positions, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to set it here at the 500 point. Okay, we can go ahead and we can turn off this. That's going to get real annoying. So we're going to take off real quick. Once again, just double checking everything. Nozzles at 10, water is set to take off, our nozzle stop is set, lights are gone. So when we get ready to take off, parking brakes on. We're going to throttle up, we're going to wait for the engines to spool, and we're going to see flow, the light indicate. There it goes, parking brake released. Now when we get to the end of the runway, we're going to flip our nozzles all the way down to the 60 degrees, and off we go. Now we're going to come nose up. I like to give it about a 3.5, 4 degree nose up, and then I'm going to start working the nozzles back, forward. Sorry, nozzles all the way back. Okay, so I went ahead and I brought us out of our water consumption on takeoff mode. Still at 40, 36, 30 degrees of nozzle, and you just want to work it way forward as you build airspeed. Pay attention to the... Let me trim this out a little bit here so I can actually talk. You want to pay attention to your vertical velocity indicator here. You can see we got about a 1,200 foot per minute climb. So we're going to go ahead and set everything to 0. Come down here and we want to set our water back down to off because we do not need it there. From here, you'd switch your HUD over to nav, you'd go fly your mission, and you'd come back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dump a whole crap ton of fuel while we talk about the landing pattern. So I'm going to dump to about 3,000 pounds. So the landing pattern for a Harrier is basically the same landing pattern that you would expect from a Hornet, in that, oh, we should probably raise our landing gear. That might help a little bit too. I always forget to do that. I'm a little bit of a goober that way. Sometimes I'll be flying around like, man, this thing's not climbing to save its life. I wonder why. And then, oh, the gear's down. So the landing pattern for the Tarawa is the exact same as what you would have in the Hornet or the Tomcat. Basically, you're going to approach the carrier off of its starboard side. That's the right side of the ship. You want to give yourself enough room there so that you can actually visually see the deck to make sure that it is clear. You want to be approaching it at about 800 feet to 1,000 feet at about 350 knots, give or take. And this is all very, 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 very important to get this right because it helps you line up things as you go. So we're going to turn here to the downwind before we enter back into the pattern here. Just bear with me while I do this. There's a lot that's going to happen when we get into this, but as we approach the brake, which is going to be that 350 knots, that 350 knots just to the right of the carrier, those are all important numbers to remember. For some odd reason, it's rolling to the left. Thanks, game. I love it. Also want to come down here and remove our nozzle stop position. It's going to be very hard to land vertically without it. Sorry, with the nozzle stop in place, rather. Getting all my words mixed up here. So we just went out and we just bombed a whole bunch of bad guys and are on our way back to the Tarawa here. Actually, we're flying around. Just bear with me, okay? Gosh, it's so technical. Waiting for our fuel to kind of work its way down. But the pattern is very easy to remember. So we're going to start off at about 800 to 1,000 feet next to the carrier. As we go into the brake, we want to be pulling approximately 1% of our speed in G. So like right now we're at 410 knots. We would want to pull 4.1 G in the brake. In the brake, you want to go ahead and pull your air brakes all the way out. You want to, at 250 knots, lower the landing gear. At 225 knots, your flap should automatically come down to 25 degrees. And that should get you to the downwind portion, which is going away, opposite direction, but about a nautical mile or so to the port side, the left side of the aircraft carrier, going in opposite directions of each other. And you want to be about 450 to 600 feet at the exit of the brake. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn back in now, because by the time we get back around, it will have been the appropriate amount of time. We're going to back off a little bit on the throttle here so that when we do get back in here, we don't have to do a whole lot of throttle manipulation. Should be coming up on getting our bingo warning here pretty soon. So the Harrier is actually surprisingly easy to land vertically once you get used to it. It's just a little bit of a muscle memory thing that you have to get used to. Okay, the Tarawa is going to be that guy off to the right. Perfect. So here we go. We're going to descend a little bit. Again, we want to maintain about 350 knots at the brake. That's the ideal position, about 1,000 feet. So we're going to set here, try and trim out some of this roll a little bit. I know how we can fix that. There we go. That should have fixed it. Okay, and now we get the master caution light for bingo fuel. Perfect. If I can get it to shut off. There's like a hitbox issue with the master caution light. Alright, we're just going to ignore it. It's going to get real old. Go away! Yeah, it's going to work. It's just going to do its thing. So, as we approach, I'm going to flip over to VSTOL mode once more. This is our landing mode. We are going way too fast. So let's back off our speed just a little bit. Again, we are a little high as well. We're a little to the left, but all of this is A-OK. Not a huge deal. Just in case you're wondering, the fuel dump on the Harrier actually automatically shuts off at bingo fuel, so we're good on fuel. It's not going to keep dumping fuel on me here. Okay, let's come down just a little bit more so that we can get it a little bit lower. Flap should be set to auto. We want to make sure that our water is set to landing. Still a little on the high side. Let's go ahead and let's pause it right here. There's a couple things that I want to go ahead and talk about. One is this right here. This is the witch's hat. This is where your nose is pointed. This is the aircraft velocity vector. This is basically where your aircraft will end up at its current speed and pitch and heading and all of that. So technically at this attitude, we would end up just shy of that shipping container, that cargo ship over there. Okay, so when we got that, let's go ahead and let's get ready for our brake here. So again, in the brake, we want to go ahead and, there's our 800 feet. We want to go ahead and deploy our air brakes, but as we pass by, check the landing area, it's clear. And we're going to get in the brake. Throttles to idle. Air brake going out. Yep, there it goes. And pulling G here. 250 knots comes around. Gear down. Flap should be automatic. We're going to add a little bit of power into this. Now we're going to start transiting our nozzles down to about 40 degrees at this point.
and you should be lined up in the downwind portion of this leg. We're gonna lose a little bit of altitude. We need to be about we're a little low. We're in the groove. Okay, so we're coming back down again. I'm gonna start lowering my nozzles just a little bit more. We're at about 50. As we get into this turn, we want to make sure that we are trimming. Trimming is so important on these landings. It just helps take some of the stress out. Okay, let's level our aircraft out just a little bit here. So, okay, should have gear down. Yep, we are ready for landing. 450 feet's a bit on the high side. We need to be about 300 or so at the exit to this. Okay, we're going to line up left of the Tarawa here. Okay, which is where we're at. As I exit this, I like to bring my nozzles to about 65, 70 degrees. We got to throttle up to maintain we want a nice even descent. We're going to trim the aircraft so that the witch's hat is on the horizon, basically. As we approach the aircraft carrier, we are going to need to go into what's called hover stop mode, which is going to be 82 on the nozzle position. So I'm going to work my nozzles down as we approach. Got to add a little bit of power here as we come in. Okay, 80. We're almost there. A little bit of power. Nose down just a little bit for speed. You can see I'm using the velocity vector here to maintain my my current altitude. Okay, so dancing on the edge here. If you get into a point where you are struggling to keep up with the Tarawa because you have reached the 82 nozzle position too soon, such as in my case, add a little bit of power, go a little bit nose down. You don't want to make huge changes. Again, keeping the velocity vector indicator basically on the horizon. One other thing I like to do here is I like to dump my flaps all the way to the bottom position. This should help with lift. Okay. We're a little light. We probably don't need quite that much. Okay. Just keep working our way forward here as we approach. We want to approach at about 150 feet above the deck. We're a little high, not too bad though. You can see we're working our way forward just a little bit at a time. We don't want to add a whole bunch of speed that we have to bleed off. Okay, so now we're going to let the nose come up a little bit. We don't need to be going super fast at this point. Okay, as we get closer and closer to the correct position, we're going to go ahead and level out. We're going to check our landing spot here, try our best to neutralize our speed. Okay, as we get closer and closer, we're getting ready. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and we're clear, so we're going to slide to the right. This requires a little bit of left rudder pedal as you aileron roll over to keep the nose pointed where it needs to. Okay, and we're going to try and land on the orange line if I can. Perfect, we're there. Okay, now we just gently let the throttle down just ever so slightly, coming down, and perfect, we touched down. Putting the parking brakes on helps. I think nose wheel steering was, no, it was off. Okay, so nose wheel steering was where it needed to be. Probably need to engage that into nose wheel steering, but as you land and touch down, turn off. Oh, we weren't even in the any water. Okay, so set your water back to off. Go ahead and set your flaps back to cruise or auto. Set it to auto, it brings it to 25. Check your nozzle positioning. And you have successfully landed on board the USS Tarawa. Congratulations! It takes a little bit of practice to do this, and when you first do this takeoff and landing routine, I recommend that you try and do your landing as a straight-in landing, rather than trying to do the side slip over maneuver. Just line yourself up with the orange mark on the runway and try and touch down as best you can in this back portion. I landed a little bit further aft of where I want to be. Ideally, you want to be about where that 7 position is, but you know, it works.
we're in the ballpark. We're on the deck. Nobody got hurt or killed. Nothing got damaged. I'd say we're doing pretty good for us casual players such as myself. Anyway, I'm Whiskey11. I hope this video has been helpful to you. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of it. Let me know down in the comments if you got any suggestions or tips that worked for you. Anyway, I'm Whiskey11 signing us out of the gaming lounge. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for watching.